as entrepreneurs, we're looking for that next revenue stream or what's next? How can we make the biggest impact? And so today I am talking with Laylee Emadi. She is a coach for creative educators. This is going to be such an exciting episode because we're going to be talking all about that what's next stage of your business. So Laylee, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Good. Well, okay. So before we get too far into the episode, can you tell me, hang on, I'm going to pause for a second because can you hear my dog?
No,
Can you not hear my dog?
no.
Okay. Well, we'll obviously be editing this out. I want to kill him. Oh my gosh. Okay. So
Relatable. Relatable.
I'm
You're fine.
like, oh my gosh. And my husband's my editor. So every once in a while, he'll be like, did you hear the child sneeze in the background? I'm like, no, I didn't even hear that, but he can hear. Okay. Here we go. All right. Okay, so Laylee, before we get into all the what's next kind of thing, can you tell us a little bit more about you and how you even became an educator?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It is. I mean, I'm going to give you the short version because I could tell this story and it could take a
I
day.
love
Uh,
business stories. So either way.
oh my gosh. They're all, I mean, I love them too because they're so unique, right?
Yeah.
But I actually started as a high school teacher before I was anything in the creative industry, before I had any kind of semblance of owning my own business. So I was a teacher and then I picked up a camera, became a photographer, tale as old as time, right? Like you pick up the camera, you become the photographer, and then you start booking and you have a hard time balancing both things. So I was like, okay, I love being a teacher. I never had the intention of going full time, unlike a lot of other, pros in
Yeah.
the industry. Um, but I had to just because limited time and one person. So I went full time into my photography business, and then I started kind of teaching high schoolers and their moms and their friends how to use their cameras.
Okay.
And then they started building their businesses, and then I started teaching them how to build a business. And from there, the education just continued to follow me. Like as the evolution of their businesses grew and my business grew, the demand just kind of popped up and people needed help learning how to teach what they knew. And they knew that I had been teaching what I know since, for decades at this
Yeah.
point. And so I was like, okay, I'll help you. And that kind of snowballed into my first course and into my mastermind and into my speaking. And so it was just kind of like a very full circle, organic, like path that I was walking. It was really it was interesting the way it all came back to where it started, which was education for me.
That's so interesting how organic that was for people that are hearing your story and they're kind of thinking, okay, well, that sounds awesome, but I'm not an educator, right? Kind of take us through that a little bit. How did you learn to write education, or did you just because you were already a high school teacher? Is that the piece that came so naturally to you?
Yeah, so I actually when I was a teacher, I also wrote curriculum for my district. And so I had like actual training on how to create education and hands-on experience on like how to shift gears when things weren't going well. Like
Mhm.
maybe the curriculum you write actually isn't great and you don't know until you get it in front of students. And so these are things that like nobody knows inherently. I wouldn't have known them if I didn't get training in them and years of experience doing those things. And so, yeah, it was really like fun and organic for me. But the reason that I now teach that is because it's not actually fun and organic for anybody. Like, I mean, if you don't have the opportunity to go through years of training, how are you going to become like an actual value-based educator?
Mhm.
Through trial and error, probably, and it'll take you a really long time. And so my goal is to kind of help people effectively and ethically and just impactfully share what they know in a way that's also profitable for them. So it's like a very I really compacted that
Yeah.
like a sentence, but it's like one of those things that I try to provide insight from my training so that people don't have to go through years of education training in order to share what they know well.
And I think that's really the whole point of education, right? Especially online education is that, being able to kind of pay for someone else's years of knowledge and get it fed to you in a really small, bite size, practical way that you can go do it. That's the whole point of having a business coach, right? Which I love. So tell us a little bit more about what you do now. I know that you're a coach for educators, but what exactly do you teach educators and creatives to do?
Yeah, so I have a couple of things that I work really closely with people on. One, I have my signature program, which is just like an online course that has like a live component to it, but it's called the Creative Educator Academy, and that's like the foundation of education for creatives. So that's going to teach you like how can I actually communicate and what in what ways should I be teaching this information that I have. So it's a foundational level
Okay.
course that people can kind of go through and gauge how to create that education. Then I have a mastermind, which actually is closed right now, reopening next year, and so 2023.
Okay.
And where we work on actually creating the education. So it's a little bit more hands on, and we go from everything from creating education to marketing it to launching it, whatever people need. Because, like I said, at this point, it's like I've had the honor of helping so many people do it, and I've done it myself so many times that like I really love to help people get that shortcut because
Yeah.
I really wanted a shortcut and it kind of wasn't around at the time. So that's the mastermind. And then I have my upcoming conference, which is kind of like the in-person component, like spin-off, if you will, like a spin-off series of the Creative Educator Academy, and it's the Creative Educator Conference. So that's coming in January as well. And then one-on-one, I feel like we have like a very similar
Yeah.
ways to work with us. But one-on-one, which again is closed right now as I'm working on the conference. I'm actually wrapping up my last one-on-one this week.
Oh.
So proud of her. But we are, next year when I reopen that, I do one-on-ones with kind of like almost VIP day style. I actually don't keep it to a day, but whatever. And we go through, I'll provide audits if audits are needed, of courses, of speaking pitches, of speeches themselves. I also provide like critique and advice and just kind of like a helping hand to get from point A to like point C,
Right.
without all the in between of having to trial and error for as long as some people have to.
Yeah. So, Laylee, what I loved when you and I met, and we have literally met twice, not even in person, right? Both of us have exchanged shows and we met via Instagram from some mutual friends and instantly connected. And what I love about what you teach is it's almost that extenuation of what I teach, right? So, I work really closely with wedding professionals and help them to really
Yeah.
go from that grind, burnt out, creative that's created this terrible job, that gives them no downtime at all. Maybe something they love, but definitely burnout, and help them to really scale into that CEO position. And then there's always this question of what's next. And so you teach a lot of how to become an educator, but also how to become a speaker. You also have a podcast, right? So, can you tell us a little bit if somebody were to sit down right in front of you or send you an Instagram DM and say, "Okay, Laylee, I have some extra time on my hands. I've grown my business and now I want to teach others how to do, XYZ, whatever." What would you ask them, or what would be some of the things they'd first want to think about?
Yeah, I mean, I'd ask probably a couple of things. One, what about your education or what about your knowledge do you want to educate on?
Okay.
So, I always say, you can do all the things, but it's really hard to build them all up at once. Like I said, similarly to you, we have so many offers, but it's like I didn't start on day one with like a course, a mastermind, a one-on-one, a podcast. You had to kind of step your way into it, and so kind of figuring out not just what you want to teach, but the format in which you want to teach it.
Mhm.
And that's really hard to do because I think it takes a lot of self awareness to say, like, I'm not meant for the stage. Like, I don't want to be on stage. I don't want to be a speaker. I actually would rather just be in the comfort of my own home. Like, I want to do online education. But
Mhm.
maybe what you're seeing is just a lot of speakers because you go to conferences or
Yeah.
that's what you see. And so you want to replicate it. So I'd ask, what do you really want to teach and how do you want to teach it? And then the second thing I would ask is, I guess, where do you see that education taking you? Is it always going to be kind of like a side to your business as a pro, like as an industry pro, or is it going to be something that you want to like put everything into and really back away from the service that you provide currently? Because I think that then it would be a little bit of a different process than maybe
Mhm.
somebody who was like, I'm going to like dip my toe in the water of education. Like, and then I guess I'll add a third. I
Okay.
would just, if I had a piece of advice right off the bat, it would be forget about what type of education you want to offer for 2 seconds. Like you still need to have that in the back of your mind, but get on a one-on-one call with like a handful of people who you want to teach. And really, I mean, we talked about this on my show, but like get on a call with them, get one-on-one in front of them. Don't take their money, just listen to them
Mhm.
and see if what you're offering actually is needed, and then do it in the format that you want to do it in.
Yeah, last year at my summit, at the Wedding Pro CEO Summit, we had several of the CEOs that were there coming up and saying, I want to do this, but I don't know if I have time, or I want to do this, but there's already so many people doing it, or I don't know what I want to teach, and so I know that this question is starting to ramble around in everybody's head. So let's break that down a little bit. So I love that you said kind of understand what you want to teach and how you want to teach it. And I will
Yeah.
tell everybody, I think I've shared this on the podcast before. I think I did everything the wrong way first as an educator. I don't think I did anything the right way. And what was interesting is I would hear that advice of like, do one thing, then take on the next, then take on the next. I would hear the advice and I would not heed it. I would just be like, no, I can be in all the places all the time. And it led to real quick burnout. And I
Mhm.
also felt like I could teach a lot of things, of course, right? We're like, well, I could teach this, or I could teach this, I could teach this. And so no one really understood what I taught because I was just kind of like there. And so I think that these are really, really great points of just trying to figure out, what do you want to teach and how do you want to teach it? What would be some of the different ways that you could teach it? When like you mentioned, maybe not everybody's designed for the stage, but what are some other ways that you would encourage somebody to think about how they would teach something?
Yeah, actually, it's funny. I have like a one of those free quizzes I created
Oh,
like 4 years ago. If anybody wants to take it, it's just layleeemadi.com/quiz. But
okay.
I
We'll
go
link it
through
in the
and
show
kind of
notes
like,
too.
yeah, it's fun. I mean, yeah, it's still there. I'm like, is it still there? It was like a while ago
Of
that I
course, it's
created
still
it.
there. That's the
But
best part about a quiz is it just lives on.
right? But I got that question a lot of
Yeah.
like, I don't really know what I'm suited for. And not everybody has that like gift and curse of self-awareness. Like
Yeah.
it's not something that comes naturally to everybody. So a few platforms, a few different ways that I see education happening. One is speaking, and speaking is one of those things that a lot of people get immediate stage fright and like clammy hands when they hear about speaking because they think, oh, I have to be on a stage in front of like 500 people. That's not true. Speaking can be a podcast, speaking can be a local group, speaking can be a small group, speaking can be a million different things.
Yeah.
It could even just be like talking one on one or in a mastermind or whatever. Just being able to effectively communicate what you want to teach, right? But so let's say speaking as a career,
Okay.
that's one way. Online education, courses, shop products, resources, that's kind of its own world. What I call group learning. So peer to peer masterminds, group coaching, which are two different things. And like I could talk about that all day because it gets so convoluted. People are like, is this group coaching? Is it a mastermind? But, small group environment teaching, in-person events, so ranging from workshops to retreats to conferences, and how those
Mhm.
subcategories of in-person education are also very different and suited for different types of people. um, so in person would be one-on-one, so mentoring or
Mm.
coaching on a small scale or a large scale, on a one-off or an ongoing. There's so many ways to teach. And I love to talk about this because I think so many people just see online courses
Yep.
and they see speaking from the stage and that's it. And I'm like, no, that's not it. There are so many ways to be a profitable educator and still stay true to your personality type.
Yeah, I love that you just named so many different things, and that could go for
A lot.
any personality type. I love that though, because, I agree with you. I think what I think I see the most often is that people immediately think they have to be a speaker. And I'll
Yeah.
be honest, I actually love speaking. I would say of all the things I do, it's my favorite thing to be on stage,
Yeah.
but it didn't fit into my lifestyle at first. And so it was very, very challenging for me to figure that out. And I kept thinking, but I have to,
Yeah.
And so
Mhm.
you don't have to. There's lots of other ways that you can get into it for sure. So, one of the other things that you talked about was doing one on one coaching in the beginning, like getting on a call with people. Now, I will say I did do that, but and not till later. Um, because similar, you think, okay, well, I'm going to teach on something I know. Either I went through it and I had to figure it out, or I've, like you did, I've been taught these things. So you think you already know the pain points. Well, I did at least. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to teach on what I think the pain points are. But there's so much value in getting on the phone or a Zoom call or whatever, one on one over coffee with other people that have, that would be a great candidate for your teaching. So, how would
Yeah.
people go about that? Because I will say that's actually come up a lot as well. Or I guess the other piece of this question would be something I hear a lot of my CEOs talk about is, they're getting quite a bit of success in their market. And so all of a sudden, there's all these people that want to pick their brain.
Yeah.
So, can you help
Uh-huh.
us talk about how that could be maybe an entry into what coaching looks like and how they could do that?
Yeah, oh my gosh, you said pick their brain and, like, I just had so many flashbacks to it's, like, the
Yep.
most commonly asked thing,
Sure.
and it's one of the most commonly talked about things, and people are very passionate about this, like, on both sides.
Mhm.
There's, like, these 2 sides of the coin. One is, like, a group of people who are like, "Absolutely not. Do not let anybody pick your brain without picking their payment method first. Like, they need to pay you for your time," and I love that sass, like, I'm here for it.
Yeah.
That's great. But I'm also, like, a really big proponent of, like, remember where you started. Are you really qualified
Mhm.
to let people pay to
Yep.
sit down for, like, a coffee date with you?
Mhm.
Like, what are you actually providing for them?
Mhm.
I think there's a missed, like, a little bit of a lost in translation bit here that goes, people, I have success. I know what I'm doing. They want to sit down with me for coffee and steal my ideas.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest with you. There is nothing that you can say in a 1 hour coffee date that somebody should pay you for unless you've created a curriculum and you know what they're walking
Yep.
away with. It's just my, like, sweet, tough love. I'm saying it with a smile. I think it's great you're doing it.
Yeah.
But unless you've actually thought out, like, what does this person need from me? Have I researched their business? Am I giving them tailored advice?
Mhm.
Are they going to walk away with this huge transformation? Or did I just give them, like, a tip on a website and, like, a tip on an Instagram? Like, those things are not really something that you should be charging for. And so I do want to say that about picking your brain is like, let's put our defenses
Yeah.
down. Let's drop our ego. Let's let go that a little bit of that, like, hubris. And let's, like, remember that we can have a conversation and not have to be paid for it.
Can
And that
I
comes from somebody who teaches profitable educators.
100%. So I'm going to stop you before you tell us how to start taking payment for it
Yeah.
because I'm so happy that you said it exactly like that. And you guys have heard me talk about this on this show before, separate from even this education component. It's the same with any business. I feel like you really, really, I mean, I did at least 2 weddings for free before I ever charged for my first
Mhm.
one. My first one, I think I charged $500 for, which I kind of want to like, there's I feel like in our industry now, there's a little bit of shame behind that. And to me, I think, you know what? She knew I was learning. She knew she was my first paying client. I was very upfront about that. And so that provides you that opportunity. Not that I wanted to make mistakes on her wedding by any means, but I didn't have an onboarding process. I didn't have checklists. I didn't have, all these things that you grow over time. And so
Mhm.
I think there's so much value in understanding that when you start becoming that person in your market that everybody wants to go to and everybody wants to pick their brain, maybe put a limit on it. Say, okay, I'm going to do this with
Mhm.
5 people or whatever it is. I'm going to do it for completely free. But you get some value out of it too. Ask them what's been hard for you? What do you wish you knew? Where's the
Mhm.
education lacking for you? Right? Like some of those, because then you
Yeah.
can start to see where the holes are. So, but you can really help those people and you can see, did what I taught them make an impact? Were they able to
Yep.
change their business or was something different about them because of what I taught them. So I love that you said that. And then you can slowly start to maybe a little charge here, a little charge there. So how would you
Yeah.
recommend doing that? Like I know some of my CEOs say to me, well, if somebody asked to pick my brain and I've started charge, like I almost don't know how to say, sure, here's how much it is. I don't know. What would you say?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think if you're gonna start charging for something like one-on-one education, it's like it's imagine your business now, like as a wedding pro. Okay. So like I shot weddings, I photographed weddings. So I was a wedding pro. And so I know how much work goes into like making yourself seem professional
Yep.
and actually becoming professional. So what went into that? You probably had to create a website. You probably had to create packages. You probably had to put a lot of thought into like, what is every dime that I'm charging for? How can I justify that?
Yeah.
The same process, and I think so many people forget this, but the same process applies to any service. Education is, at the end of the day, a service with a transformation at the end, like hopefully, in
Okay.
theory. So what are you charging? Like, what service are you charging for? And in the same steps that you took to create this professional business as a
Mhm.
wedding pro, what steps are then needed to take to create that same educator professionalism? So, like, as a one on one mentor or coach, are you going to like think about, are you going to do one-off coaching sessions, or
Mhm.
do you think what you teach on and who you teach, do they need something that's more ongoing, or could they choose, and then there's options of packages, but you have it all laid out, you have it all ready to go? That's the biggest thing, is people get afraid to say like, hey, yeah, you can pick my brain, but like here's actually like my mentoring packages,
Right.
and give them a website just like you would for someone who is booking you for a wedding.
Mhm.
It's the same. It's the same kind of exchange,
Yeah.
or it should be, as opposed to just being like, yeah, my mentoring sessions are $300 an hour and we can meet at a coffee shop. Like, no, no, where's the thought behind that? Come on.
100%.
Like, are you really okay being less professional as an educator than you are as a wedding pro? You shouldn't be.
That is such a good tip because, a lot of us, hopefully you guys heard what Laylee just said, because a lot of us start out as wedding professionals. I would say most of us, right? You start out as a wedding professional because someone said, "Oh, you're good with a camera. Would you shoot my wedding?"
Mhm.
Right? Or, "Oh, you planned a high school banquet. Could you plan my wedding?" Like ridiculous, right? And so you plan your first one for a friend for free, and then another friend wants it, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, you're like, wait, I'm doing all these weddings for free. No, I need to start charging for it. I need to make a website. I need to understand what my packages are. So it's the exact same process. I love that you said that.
Yeah.
And I feel like one of the things that I went through when I started becoming an educator, when I started going from free to a tiny bit, once I started realizing the exact transformation. And so I thought that was interesting that you said that, because education is a service with a transformation at the end. You have to know what they're going to get out of that time with
Yeah.
you and be able to really guarantee it, as long as they do what you ask them to do, right? But
Yeah.
being able to know what that transformation is, because the more you know what value you provide, just like a wedding pro, the better
Mhm.
you are confident in your pricing to charge for that transformation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I love it. Okay,
Yeah.
so talking a little bit about speaking, just turning the table just a smidge. If somebody said,
Yeah.
"No, I think speaking is what I want to do, and I really don't even know how to break into that market." Do you have one or two kind of beginner tips, like never have spoken before? What would you tell them to do?
Yeah. So, okay, I'll share two.
Okay.
One, I would ask the question, when you think to yourself, I want to become a speaker, do you think I want to become a profitable professional speaker? Or are you in your mind envisioning, I want to become a creative entrepreneur who also speaks in order to bring awareness to my other offers?
Mm,
Because those are two very different things.
yes.
Um, and I think there are two different paths you take to get there, and also you would prepare completely differently, right? So, and if you're like, what is she talking about? Envision, I think of like a professional speaker as like, okay, so this bank hired me as a speaker, gave me $20,000, and I went and spoke as a keynote speaker at their corporate event, and then I left, and that was it.
Yep.
Or did I show up to, Brandee's CEO summit and deliver a speech, but kind of got to know all the attendees, and I really immersed myself in that creative vibe of like the living room, experience. And I got to know all of them, and now they're all my clients. And that's how I walked away with $20,000. So there's just two very different.
Yep.
I'm not saying you don't get paid in one
No,
or the
sure.
other, but
That makes sense.
you really do. You get paid more as a professional
Sure.
speaker, up front,
Mhm.
so like knowing your audience, knowing what it is you want to teach and where. So that's the first question. I always have to give that disclaimer because my advice varies
Yeah.
on
That makes
like the
sense.
answer.
Yeah.
So let's say you want to do the creative speaking route because that's kind of what most people want. Like if you're a wedding pro, you've probably gone to maybe like
Wedding
I don't know,
MBA.
some of these bigger
Yeah.
conferences. Yeah, exactly. And so you're going and you're seeing them and you want to be one,
Mhm.
right? So you honestly start with as much practice as humanly possible in order to create like an actual like a resume
Yeah.
essentially, so that when you pitch yourself to speak you can say like, hey, go look at me speaking here, or take a look at the topics that I speak on here. So you, again, I hate to keep saying it, but it's like the same process, right? What do you want to teach? Make it sound and look professional, get the experience under your belt, and then package it all up and put it out there for somebody to see. Because at the end of the day, speaking is like applying for a job over and over again. Every time you pitch yourself to
Mhm.
speak, it should feel as professional and as thoughtful and intentional as you would if you were applying for a position, in like a regular job.
That makes so much sense. I love that so much. Okay, so the last point you made in the beginning when I asked you kind of, what would you tell somebody that wanted to get into the next phase of their business was that you really need to understand what you're doing it for, right? And that goes for
Yeah.
all of it. And we've talked about this on the show a little bit before. Are you wanting to promote your existing business? Or are you wanting to create something completely different? And do you have
Yeah.
any tips on, how somebody would think about that? Or is it really just kind of personal preference?
I mean, I think it's a little bit of personal preference, but I also think it's kind of just sitting back and looking at what is the end result of what I want. So like, for example, I always like to use myself as an example because what a
Okay.
better example of like just having so many mistakes and so many, like I'm an open book and I don't mind sharing. But when I started hosting my first workshops, they were wedding workshops. I
Okay.
hosted like wedding photography workshops. Listen, I have never been like the world's best and most in demand wedding photographer. I mean, I booked and it was great and I was comfortable with my prices and I was comfortable with my processes and I had something to teach. But at the end of the day, like I was just doing it because I loved teaching. And
Yeah.
so it wasn't actually pointing back to anything in my business. Um, did it help me look a little bit more credible as a wedding photographer? Sure. Like my clients enjoyed that, like they got to be models. I'd call them in and then their friends would be like, I saw them get to model. Like
Yeah.
I'm going to hire Laylee. And that was fun.
Yeah.
But like I didn't put that thought into it. And so I wish that I could go back and tell myself, like, where do you want, like, why are you doing this? Like,
Yeah.
what do you want out of it? What's that end result? And so I do think it's, unfortunately, it's a lot of reflection and people don't really like to spend that much time thinking. Like,
Yeah.
that sounds silly, but like, we're doers, right? Entrepreneurs are like, let's go.
Yes.
Let's stop talking. Let's start moving. And I'm like, wait, take a minute and think, like, why?
Yeah. What do you want from it? And I think that that's really important because I'm on the same page as you. I really wanted to just start teaching other wedding pros.
Yeah.
And I really didn't give it a lot of thought that how would this enhance the business I already have, which is blush. And I just started doing. So I don't know that I would have done it differently, but I definitely
Yeah.
didn't take the time to think about it. And so I think it's really important step that you think, do I want this to enhance the business I already have? So maybe it's a B2C type of education, more for
Yeah.
clients that can enhance your business you already have, or it's that B2B and it's just a completely different revenue stream. So this is so helpful. I know you guys, I know some of you are walking or driving or doing chores with your AirPods in, and you're like, my mind is melting because all of this is like, I want to go implement all of this today. So, Laylee, can you tell us a little bit about your summit coming up? About yours is called a conference. I'm sorry, I keep calling it a summit.
I mean, honestly,
Who cares?
apples to
It's,
apples, like tomato, tomato, it doesn't matter.
but still, I know it is a conference though. So, tell us a little bit about it because it's coming up soon.
Yeah, it is. It's coming up in January. I'm so excited about it. It is honestly the first of its kind that I've seen. I always like to give the disclaimer that I've seen. I've never seen anybody offer something like this before. So we're going to be going through and basically every single session is going to be workshop style. And we've talked before. So anybody listening who's familiar with Brandee's Summit,
Mhm.
it's similar in format of it's not just lecture, sit and learn and get lost in a large ballroom. It's intimate. We're going to have like it's capped at, no more than 50
Yeah.
people, probably less,
Yeah.
honestly. And I'm excited about that because we've got 9 speakers who are there to not just teach from the stage, but to connect with people and for us to be able to all connect with one another and get ideas on our next steps, on our current offerings, on launches, on everything that educators struggle with on their own at home.
Mhm.
So, like, I was telling Brandee yesterday, it's really interesting because this is really for anybody who wants to or currently offers education. And I am not the kind of person that advertises to like a vague group, but because educators and like, listen, if this isn't you, please don't be offended. But educators should be established already in their business. Like you should already know what you're doing.
Mhm.
So, and even a beginning educator is an experienced entrepreneur,
Right.
hopefully.
That's the idea.
So, like, if you're not, maybe this isn't for you, and that's okay. Like, maybe take the academy, it's foundational, but
Yes.
like, this is not. This is like, we're gonna dive in together. We're gonna work hard and play hard because I like balance. And we're gonna talk about like the things that we're all struggling with on our own with selling education,
Yeah.
because at least for me, packaging, distributing, selling, and profiting off of education has been a really hard part of it as somebody who just loves to teach.
Yeah.
Like, but we gotta eat.
We
What
gotta
did you say
sell.
yesterday? You said something about if you're not making money in your
It's
business,
just a hobby.
it's just a hobby. So we're gonna get us out of that,
That's
right?
right. No hobbies. No hobbies. Not that we call a business at least. So I'm really excited about this lately. I am checking calendars. I told her yesterday, I'm like, I have to be there. So I cannot wait. I'm super excited about it. And for anybody that can't quite make the conference but still wants to learn from you or wants to connect with you, where can they do that?
Yeah, so you can find me over my website is layleeemadi.com. Instagram is at Laylee_Emadi. Or you can just look up the Creative Educator Academy. I'm not hard to find with my unique name, and I'm always happy to chat in the DMs. I love a good voice memo. So
Yes, me
send it over.
too. I think you and I voice memoed for like 2 weeks before we actually were able
We
to do
did.
this, so super fun.
We
Laylee,
did.
this was so, so helpful. You guys go say hi to Laylee and just tell her that you heard her on the Wedding Pro CEO podcast and
Yeah.
that tell her one thing that you might have learned or that you might implement from listening to her today, and Laylee, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. And I would love that. Yeah. Let me know what you guys think.
Yeah.